had to
People love
use.
it.
And
Right.
that's what these ambassadors have done. And that's kind of how like I said, how I found several of our ambassadors has been them contacting me saying, hey, I would love to, represent you. And I would love to put your stuff on my social media, and I would love to use it in my classes. And, all of our ambassadors get their own personal coupon code. So when they go to a class, somebody says, hey, I want that. Then they have a coupon code that they can tell those people, hey, go to the website, use my coupon code, here's your savings. And
oh, that's great. Yeah.
Really the biggest thing is just people going or seeing them somewhere and trying them.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've experienced that. It's, because I bring other stuff with me, and most of the time I'm not trying to say that negatively. I just, like, in a positive way, like, I was kind of amazed at how much people wanted to either try them or take them. So
I like hearing that.
That was really interesting, And I have a lot of different products coming through my world at the moment. So,
I'm sure.
So I was really surprised, and I thought that was great, right? And I do. I mean, now I'm like looking for your scissors when I'm cutting things. I'm like, where are those good ones? So
yeah, and see that's what we hope for, and that's because before that you may have never even heard of us.
It's true.
Or just right. Like, I don't know this brand, and because I'm not familiar with this brand, I don't think I'm going to try it. Yeah. But then when you were sent the product and you tried it, you're like, okay, I'm a believer. I think this is good stuff. And that's a lot of how we get advertisements through word of mouth, or people just trying them and just like, wow, these are really pretty good. And again, like I said, we're inexpensive, and a lot of times people look at that as cheap.
Yeah.
And they're not cheap. They're just inexpensive. We're able to keep costs down. We've done enough research in the marketing that we know what we need to make these products, and we know how to make them with high quality without, ridiculous cost to people.
Well, and you're also, I imagine that because you've got the other two industries that you've got, the two other divisions, that your cost, like you make a lot of sharp things. So it isn't like
exactly.
And I suspect that brings your costs down in some way because you're used
exactly.
to, and you've got to probably, do you have like a dedicated, you have a lot of resources making all the things you're making. So that
exactly.
helps.
Yeah,
that's huge. Yeah, because we've been talking to big companies and tiny ones, and the tiny ones, they just get kind of, the teeny tiny ones get really hit both in terms of the manufacturing cost and also the transportation cost. So making it overseas,
exactly.
But if you're making imagine with bigger purchases and a bigger relationship, that helps a lot too.
Exactly.
Yeah, because we were talking to one company, they're like the price of their retail price is like 30% is shipping right now.
Oh, shipping is outrageous.
Yeah.
It is absolutely outrageous.
Yeah, but that's like a huge component of what's going into these products. All right, so let's talk quickly about the double-sided self-healing cutting mat, which you sent to me, and also the fabric and ruler cutter, the machine-y thing, the thing that you slide. But I did not get to use it because they got swiped from me before. But it was such a huge hit, and I'm totally happy that things go out in the world. So you have to tell me a little bit more about sort of how it works and why people are so into it, because they were way into it. I saw a little video of them using it at this group.
Yeah, it's nice for its convenience. For one thing, you got everything right there. You got your ruler, you've got your makeshift or rotary cutter kind of thing there, and it's just a really convenient thing. If you're cutting a lot of strips, it's just a lot less wear and tear. It's a lot easier on your wrists. Sometimes using a rotary cutter, if you're doing, repetitive, just cutting strips and cutting strips and cutting strips, it can wear on your wrist. Yeah. This is a little bit easier because you put the pressure on it with the palm of your hand and you just slide it forward. So it's a little less, it's a little less stress on your wrist. Yeah. So that's nice. Like I said, it's just kind of got everything you need right there with the ruler and the cutter, and
yeah, it looks really cool.
It is very popular. Yeah, people really do like it.
People really like it. They go crazy for it. Are these, I think, are fabric stores using these as well, or are they too short for fabric shops?
They're probably too short for a fabric shop.
Got it. Well, this is so interesting. Okay, let me look at my list because I had like 1,000 things on my list. Hold on. Okay, so embroidery versus quilting versus applique scissors. What's the difference?
Some of them you can cross over. Some of them can be used in every aspect. We advertise them as such just because that's who they're mostly focused to, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Just because they're quote unquote quilting scissors doesn't mean that somebody who's doing embroidery can't use them.
Yeah.
It's just those are more focused to the quilting industry. Those are the people who are most likely to use those. The real crossover comes in the some of the embroidery scissors, like I said before, because they have that curve to them.
Yeah.
People use them in embroidery for the embroidery hoops or just to get around, edges or things like that. But they're also used in quilting, as I said, where if you're trying to cut under the foot of your sewing machine, those make it a little easier to get into. So just because they're labeled applique or embroidery or quilting doesn't mean that's the only way they can be used. It's just that's who's most likely to that's most likely to appeal to.
Yeah. Okay, so let's just take a scenario where you're like, okay, somebody's listening, they're like, okay, I'm totally willing to sort of try these new scissors, but I'm not I go to your website and I'm completely confused. So what's like the, the go-to basic, like if you're going to get a couple of pairs of scissors, what are you recommending to people sort of as getting into the market of getting into good scissors?
I think one of again, depends on what people are looking for, so to speak. But I usually recommend the 5.5-inch straight scissors. It's a good size. It can be used for any of the markets. Mm-hmm. It's kind of a good feel for what the blades feel like. It's a good feel for what the handles feel like. It's kind of a good starter. Yeah. Not everybody's going to want to use a 7-inch scissor. That may be too big for some people. So that 5.5-inch is a really good starting point. So that's a good one to have. The 5.5-inch curve tip is really nice too because it's got so many uses as far as because the tip's curved. It's good for if you're, like I said before, fussy cutting, or if you're trying to cut stitches without cutting your fabric, or if you're trying to do, get under a foot of a sewing machine or something like that. Those curve tips are really good for that too. And again, they're kind of on the smaller side, so it's a good starting point. When I'm sending out stuff to, like I have my ambassadors, and a lot of them will tell me, these are the things I'd like to try out, and that's perfect.
Yeah.
If I have somebody who's like, just send me whatever you want, I will always send, and I can give you my list of what I would always send if somebody called me and said, hey, I'd like to have your stuff in my store. I'd like to start carrying your stuff, but I'm not real familiar with everything. Yeah. Just send me kind of a grab bag of what you think is best. Yeah. I'm always going to send those 5.5-inch curve tip, always. I'm going to send the 7-inch sewing quilting scissors that are serrated, which I told you are probably my favorites.
Yeah.
I'm always going to send some of our snippies, which are the thread snips. Uh-huh. I'm not sure if I sent you those or not.
But you sent me other stuff, but that's good.
I would always send a pair of those. I would send the seam ripper for sure, because that's a huge
because people go nuts over it.
That's a huge win. I would send our 3.5-inch standard embroidery scissors. They're just your standard regular embroidery scissors. I would send those because those are kind of a good feel for what we can do with embroidery. Uh-huh. I would send a rotary cutter, probably the 45 millimeter, just because it's our newest one. It's awesome. I absolutely love it. Uh-huh. I would send one of the cutting mats, for sure. Probably the large one, just because it's kind of got a better size to it. And I would send the fabric cutter, which is that you call it the machine-looking thing.
That's what you said. Yep, that's pretty cool. Well,
I would send that.
It really is amazing because you just kind of get overwhelmed by coolness. They look so pretty and they cut so nicely. It's really cool. They're really great. They're fun. They're made for a festive time. And we're trying
to, we're really trying to hit this younger, this modern quilting group. Like that's who I really want to put a lot of focus on because they're just more willing to try newer stuff. Yeah. They're not set in their ways of this is the scissor I've always used. It's the only one I'm ever going to use. Yeah. They're willing to try different things, and the colors are fun. And we're in the middle of revamping all of our packaging, so we're kind of changing our whole look. We're doing, like just a whole new branding thing.
Interesting.
So some of our newer items have our new branding.
Really
and
cool.
it's pretty exciting.
Well, I would love, I have more questions for you, but I would love for you to send me more stuff with the new branding and the old branding, and maybe we could chat about that. Because I'd be really interested to talk about how the rebranding process is happening and what, all that. That would be really interesting. And
sure.
Is that because you're trying to go for a younger, hipper demographic? So sort of updating
and just updating it. It's such the rainbow that we've had forever is just, it's done its time. It's served its purpose.
It's time. Yeah.
And we're just trying to move it to a newer area. And like I said, we really are trying to hit the market and make people who've never heard of our stuff look at it and say, wow, I've never heard of that. And we really push towards, we have a lot of distributors.
Yeah, tell me
and a lot of the
that.
big, that is our biggest focus, is to get our stuff to our distributors and have our distributors get it into your local shops, and whatever your shop may be.
And you're working with all the sort of major distributors? Is that kind of what you're doing? Yeah.
Yes. So we work with these distributors, and they carry our stuff. They put it on their websites or their, in their storefronts, and then hopefully stores will come and buy it. That's kind of our biggest goal, because that's a win-win for us. Like I will always take the consumer. I will always take the consumer who will buy my stuff. I will never turn that away.
Yeah.
But having that broader reach by using distributors and stores, it's easier for them to find our stuff. So that's another goal of ours, is when these people go to a workshop or they go to the American Quilter Society show and they go in one of these classrooms and they use our stuff, our goal is for them to go to their local shop and say, hey, can you carrying havels-sewing stuff? And then just expand our market. It's a really good process for us. It's a great way for us to work.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. So how important is, at this point, in terms of marketing, so you've got the distributors, how important is, what is your marketing, not budget per se, but the percentage of time you're spending on social media, how is that changing? Is it
I'm trying to be way more involved with social media. In the past, it's not really something we focused on very much. We're hopefully going to have a new website soon, something else we're working on. Our current website's a little cluttered and a little hard to follow, so we're trying to make it a little more streamlined, a little cleaner, a little more updated. So I think that will help. I try to post on Instagram as regularly as I can. So that's something I really want to start focusing on more. And then we have a Facebook page. It's it's not as well followed as I'd like it to be. Our Instagram has really started to take off. So
it really is
good thing. Really,
for quilters. We haven't done a ton on Instagram yet because we've been kind of focused on our little Facebook group, but I think that's our next phase, because it clearly is, at least for the quilting world, a really big part of it.
Huge. It's huge. It's the biggest. That's how our ambassadors really, really hit Instagram hard, and they've been fantastic. They always tag us, or they will show a particular item that they used in their project, and they will tag us and they will say, I used so and so for this project and loved it, and they always put out their coupon codes. And I mean, it really is a big way for us to market, is through that Instagram, because I think people who quilt and craft and sew and embroider and all that sort of stuff, if they see someone that they know using a product, they're like, oh, wow, you use that? Well, if you use it, then you know what? I should probably look into that.
Yeah,
and so
really true,
people who use our stuff and advertise it, that's absolutely our best advertising.
That's really interesting. Well, it is interesting to sort of see part of the experiment. So I'm a law professor, but I'm also a social entrepreneurship professor. So I wear both hats, and so part of this project is kind of experiencing and experimenting with all kinds of things, and it's kind of interesting to sort of see it from the inside of how important that stuff becomes. The influencers and all of that, and just having, if you start to see things over and over again, you're like, oh, I got to get that because that's the thing I need.
Exactly.
It's really interesting. Well, that's very that's fascinating. Hold on, let me get back to my list. My heart. Okay, so and quilt shows. Do you go to quilt shows, or do you do mostly through the distributors? Like, how much do you have to be at like quilt markets